Okay, so when I started the website, how many of you people did y'all hear Doug Welch speak? Doug Welch is an amazing man, okay? He truly is an amazing man. He's had an amazing career. His book, I believe, is the second best-selling gardening book ever written, behind only Neil Sperry's book. So his Gardener's Almanac, great book, okay? If you don't have it, I really recommend it. So when I was starting my blog, I went to Doug, and at the time when he was here, you know, he was in charge of AgriLife and everything, and he also had the radio program here on the local A&M station. And so he was very, very involved in this, and he's fielding questions all the time. And so I told him, I said, well, Greg, or Doug, I said, here's what I want to do, you know, blah, 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 blah. And he said, that's fine. He said, you know, there's a million blogs out there. There's a million gardening blogs out there. He said, you can do whatever you want to, but he said, you need to name your blog the 3 T's. I said, okay, what do you mean? And he said, I'm telling you, the only thing people care about are trees, turf, and tomatoes. He said, that's it. He said, I call them the 3 T's, trees, turf, and tomatoes. And it's just very interesting, you know, this is the 40th anniversary of Master Gardener, and they're talking about the past and the future. So I was eating lunch today with Skip Richter, and Tom Fisher, is that what he said? Tom Fisher was, I'm sorry? Ted Fisher was the first horde agent hired in Texas. He was hired in Austin, and I already had this built into my presentation, and he said, Doug Welch didn't come up with that. he said, Ted Fisher, who was the first horticulture agent in Texas, actually came up with that, trees, turf, and tomatoes, or however you want to say it, and Doug's just adopted it and gone with it. So I tried to take his advice, and it has pretty much kind of played out on my blog. You know, if you go back and you look at all the articles, we've got almost 400 articles out there on the blog. You can group them up, and by far and away, these are the top topics as far as the articles that have been written, and they're the top questions that come in. Always, this is what people care about. Okay? So, turf, trees, and tomatoes. So I went in and I did a little summation on some of these stats, and these were some of the things that I found interesting, that I thought y'all might find interesting too. Just taking care of your lawn accounts for $8 billion in sales annually in the U.S., okay? And that's not counting water, okay? This is only counting things that the people that are selling stuff to you care about. So this is not water. This is not how much we spend on watering our lawns. This is fertilizer. This is lawnmower. This is weed eater strings, all of that. So $8 billion a year, that's a bunch. It says 55 million households. Out of those 120 million households, it says 55 million households participate in lawn care. I'm curious where the other 45% are. I mean, almost everybody I know has a lawn, unless you live in these high-rises or whatever.
Lawn care services.
Well, and that's a good thing. We're going to get to that. Okay. Yeah, we're going to get to that. We're going to call that, I've got a slide coming up about some of the negatives and positives and all that we're finding from these surveys, and we're going to talk about that one. That one's very significant for us. It is the highest category for both spending and participation. Okay? So really the 3 T's, according to this, should be turf, okay, then trees, and then finally tomatoes, because as we've seen, shockingly enough, vegetable gardening is kind of at the bottom of the big ones. The other thing that was very interesting to me, you know, when we were talking about that average female gardener, what did we say about her education level? She had college. She was a college degree person. And this is overwhelming. When you look at these, and every one of these 15 categories that they break out, college-educated people with a little extra spending money, they're the ones that keep the gardening industry going. The only place that didn't matter was your education level was in turf. The same number of people that did not have a degree, or that only had high school, and that had some college and that had a college degree, they all mowed their lawns exactly the same. Same level of participation for all education levels. And I thought that was very, very interesting. Okay, the next one, trees. Like I say, I love trees, and I kind of have a hands-off approach to my trees. But 22 million gardeners evidently care a lot about their trees because they spend $22 billion a year on tree care. And so tree care in this place, it can be herbicides, pesticides, fertilize, pruning, accessories, mulch mats, all those things that you have. So to me, that's kind of shocking. Now, and I understand I'm different. I live in the country. So I live out in the country. There's trees everywhere. So honestly, people don't care if one of their oak trees dies because they got 600 more, okay? So I do understand that in the suburban areas and everything where you have very few trees and they are precious, I understand why people are spending this one. All right, guys, that average female gardener, there are only 2 categories where men spent more than women and participated more than women. Trees are one of them. What do you think the other one was? The lawn, okay? So evidently, my wife tells me that my whole purpose in living is to pick up heavy stuff for her. Evidently, it's also to mow the lawn and trim the trees. So evidently, that's what guys were put on earth for, is picking up heavy stuff, mowing your lawn, and trimming the trees. Now, how many people noticed, y'all remember the drought of 2011? Horrible, horrible drought, okay? My wife and I live in an interesting area. We're in the alluvial plain of the Brazos River, and so where we're at, we're on black clay, but just beyond the black clay is the sand. So the black clay, the Brazos River is laid down over the years, but literally right down our street, everybody's on sand. Well, everybody that had trees and sand, they might have thought they survived the drought, but now, even to this day, some of those trees are just toppling over. I don't think the average homeowner understands trees. I mean, and this is kind of an important, I'll get all garden tippy here for you. Do you know how to water your trees? Tell me how y'all water your trees. I don't. Well, you should. You should. I mean,
I live where it rains a lot.
it's got to go deep. That's good. Ding, 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 ding. The drip line. You water trees at the drip line. So when you set your sprinkler to water your tree, you don't ever put the hose down at the base of the tree and walk off and hope that it floods it, okay? Where the living, growing roots of the tree are at the drip line, because that's how nature designed the tree. The rain hits the tree, it runs off of the edge, so the growing roots, a lot of people don't realize this, but white roots are the only roots on a tree that are actually growing. So when you see those roots that are coming on top of the ground from your live oak tree and everything, they're mostly dead. Okay, they are there for support of the tree. But those white roots that are at the ends of that thing, there's thousands and thousands of them, and they reach out into the soil. And this is true for any plant, okay? I'm sorry, I just went all garden tippy on you, but this is something I get all worked up about. That lady this morning, she was saying, pull your pots off before you buy a plant. Another thing that you need to be concerned about when you buy plants at a nursery, you want to buy the smallest plant you possibly can, because any plant, if it's ever allowed to fully dry out, it kills those white roots. Okay? Now, some plants are very good at putting those roots back. Coleus, geraniums, some of those things will put them back. But most vegetable plants, if they're ever allowed to dry completely out and they kill off those little micro white roots, the plant will never recover. It will never produce a big, healthy, plant. So buy the smallest plants that you can, because they have a greater chance of being kept constantly moist since they were seeded. So that's a little garden tip. But this is what's making the trees topple over. So when in 2011, it got so dry, and it got so dry, so deep for so long, it killed all of those little thousands of white roots. That's what holds the tree to the ground. It's not those big roots, okay? So everybody always says, I've got a root going under my sidewalk. Can I chop it out with killing the tree? Yes, you can. Now, in a perfect world, you wouldn't want to, but you can, as long as it's got other roots that are going to support it and all of that. So I'm sorry I got off the stats. I got a little preachy, but anyway, yeah, did y'all see Patty's talk this morning? When she was talking about the parsnips and how with a little bitty parsnip, which is like a carrot, you have to take a fork to stick down in there and break it out of the soil because of all those little white roots that go on. So anyway, your garden tip for the day. How am I doing on time? Oh man, I am golden. All right, tomatoes. What does the average female gardener grow in her vegetable garden? that average gardener grows a whole lot of things that you and I have never heard of. But so for tomatoes, this is keeping with my trees, turf, and tomatoes theme. I threw all vegetable gardening into the tomatoes. All right, 25% of all households garden, $1.7 billion in sales, 52% purchases by women. Sales and participation is the only major category that actually we had a decrease in the number of gardeners. So that's very sad for those of us that love to garden. And I assume, so when I put this presentation together, I looked at this as a teaching opportunity because I assume all of you people are master gardeners. You're working in the community, you're educating the community, you want to provide them with information. And one of the things you want to do is give them reasons to garden and get them excited about it and all. That's why I pointed this out, because I think your experience probably mirrors my experience, that this is what people really get worked up about and come to the talks about and everything else. I mean, really, about the only things I see people get worked up about are vegetable gardens and roses. So if you want to get a good turnout at your garden event, have vegetable speakers, preferably tomato speakers, and rose speakers, because that's what people really care about. But anyway, participation and sales in this category have gone down, and that is a bad thing for us.